with the Celtics. Game 5 is Monday. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
Thank you. Me too. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. So what did you want to tell us today about grief and grieving, Kim?
So I am, let me start off by saying I have no education. I don't have a college degree in this. I am basing all of my words and advice on my life experiences. Mm-hmm. And having said that, that's where I'm going to run down my credentials.
All right.
When I was 16, I lost both of my grandfathers a week apart. 2 weeks later, my cousin was killed by a drunk driver. 1 week after that, my great-grandfather was found dead. He went out for his morning walk and had a heart attack. That's when I was 16. When I was 17, my biological father died of an accident at the age of 40. When I was 25, my mother died of cancer, a long battle, 23 years. When I was 28, I lost my daughter and I almost died. When I was 36, I buried my husband due to a car accident. When I was 41, I buried the guy that I knew as my dad, my stepdad. He died of an aneurysm. When I was 50, my work wife, one of my best friends, died in a car accident. And at 51, my boyfriend of 8 years died.
My gosh. Yeah, you definitely have some experience for sure.
So, yeah, from all of that, I've just learned to navigate and learned a lot about myself and a lot about people.
Right.
And a lot of people come to me, but during the pandemic, it was interesting because I went to a numerologist and she did my numbers and she said, "You're an 11." And I said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "You're a master teacher. You were put on this earth to teach people about something." And I said, "The only thing I seem to be a master of is death." And she said, "No, honey, you're a master of grief. You're here to teach people how to get through grief." And I went, you know how the stars align, you kind of have a revelation, you're like, oh, that makes complete sense.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I got it. So I have people coming to me all the time, you know, they've lost their husband or they lost their child or they're like, how did you do it or how did you get through it? And I just tell my story and I give my advice, and I'm hoping I'm helping more people feel better and understand grief. And the one thing I want to say about grief is that it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, Michelle, when you lost your mom last year, it's different for you and your two sisters. You are all experiencing different because you had different relationships with her.
Right.
You know, so you can't, your sisters may be feeling or at a different place, you know, because grief has anger and depression, and grief has a lot of different steps. And that's something about grief that I've learned too, is it never goes away. It becomes a part of you, and you learn to just make peace with it.
Right. I like that. I mean, it becomes a part of you. It's not something that sometimes people will say to you, "Oh, just get over it." You know, people say some stuff that just is outlandish, you know, but it's not really something you get over. It's something that you can't make it smaller. You can grow around it, but you can't make it smaller.
Right. And everybody's grief journey is different, and different memories and different things that happen. And sometimes I'll be going along happy-go-lucky, and a memory will just smash me in my face, and I'm like, okay, let's breathe through this. Let's think about it. But then I don't go down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be people that say, what does that have to do with addiction, or what does that have to do with, you know, your podcast? Well, I know people that say I drink because I don't want to think about my wife. I don't want to think about my child. And alcohol makes the memories go away.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
a lot of people use that as a coping.
Drunk,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, people use that as a coping mechanism. Definitely.
Because it's a trauma. It's a trauma to all of us.
Right. Me
Me losing my daughter was a trauma. Me having 2 police officers stand at my front door and tell me my husband's never coming home was a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to navigate it. And if you haven't, if you haven't experienced it in that certain way, because maybe somebody else did lose their husband, but it was to cancer. So they lost their husband different than I did.
Right.
And so the emotions and feelings I'm going through are a little bit different than theirs. And that's something that people have asked me, because like my mother had cancer for 23 years and was pretty much told every time she went to the doctors, you're going to die. You're going to die any minute.
Right.
And she had it for 23 years. My husband died suddenly. So people have said, which is the worst or the better of the two evils? And I don't think there is one.
Right.
They both suck.
Right. Yeah. There's still a profound loss. Exactly. Yeah.
It's still, they're still not here anymore. I still miss them all the time. And, people will text me on my mom's birthday. Tomorrow will be my mom's 72nd birthday. And people will text me, thinking of you. Well, I appreciate that, and I do appreciate it. But I think about my mom all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just one day.
My grandsons will do something, and I'm like, oh, my God, do you see that, Mom? Do you see that? That's you. He didn't come up with that by himself.
Right. That's funny. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally can relate to
So, and I'm writing a book right now about grief. I had told my friend I should have like a website or something. He goes, no, you need to write a book. And I was like, you're right. So I'm writing a book about grief, because the grief I have for my mom is different than my husband, is different than my child, even different. My boyfriend's is different, because I had a different connection with my boyfriend than I did with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So the grief you have for Jody, your brother Michelle, is different than the one for your mom or your dad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When my one thing when I think about grief is when my cousin Sean passed away. This is like maybe like the closest to home. I mean, when my Uncle David died too, but when Sean passed away, we were a month apart, and we were very close growing up, and we even had like our daughters like within a couple months of each other, and we both named them Alyssa. And at the time when he passed, though, we weren't very close because he was using, him. He was he had a substance abuse disorder, and I would remember I was in Arizona, and I was visiting my brother, and I went over, and my brother told me that my brother had heard about it, and I heard someone screaming, and they were just screaming, and I was thinking, who's screaming? And then I realized I was screaming. Like I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and I'm in my brother's cul-de-sac, out in Arizona, and the mountains just bouncing off the mountains, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I was just in such complete and utter shock. And he like grabbed me like by the shoulders, my brother did, and he kind of just shook me, and he said, you need to snap out of it, and you need to go call, Jennifer. You need to go call your cousin, his sister. And Jennifer and I were very close, and I knew he was right. But at the same time, like looking back on it, even right away, I was like frustrated because I didn't feel like I had a chance to really grieve when I needed to grieve. So, but that in our family, that's what we did. We took care of everyone else. I mean, that's how we were raised, taking care of people, right? So I had to go and call my little baby cousin and talk to her, which was fine. But I look back on it and went, man, I didn't really get to grieve right then and there when I really needed to. And then you kind of stuff that stuff down. And when they say there's like all these steps, you're supposed to feel like, whatever, anger or denial, anger, blame, all these things. I mean, I remember feeling all those things when my brother died, but it wasn't always necessarily in that order. And you would still feel it even today. You could still become angry. And so it's kind of like this whole idea of like go through these steps and then get over it. It's silly because that doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. They'll come up again, and then you have to experience them again, and you have to work through them again, and try not to go down that rabbit hole. You're passing that rabbit hole going, nope, not today, not today.
Right. Yeah.
And for me too, like when my best friend, my work wife, Heather died, we worked 10 feet apart for over 5 years, and she died tragically and suddenly, and I got right after that. So she died in August of 2019, and then the pandemic hit that following March. Well, because we didn't replace her at work, they weren't sure what they were going to do. We were, working really hard to do her job and our job, and I was just powering through payroll and stuff. And when my boss sent me home because I was high risk for COVID, I went down to the car. So like I said, she passed in August, and I got sent home March 18th of 2020. And I got down to my car and I started crying, and I realized I'm not crying because I got sent home. I'm crying because I'm relieved. And I had not processed her death
Yeah.
because I had to power through my job. And I literally, the beginning of the pandemic, sat in bed every day for a month just trying to process the loss of my friend.
Yeah.
And we were so close and stuff. And now she left 2 babies and a husband. And, you know, it was very tragic. But to try to ignore those feelings and to try to ignore that stuff, it's going to come back at you tenfold.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you need to process it. And it is a mental thing, and we need to take care of each other. And they fall into the addiction. And we just saw, you know, people who are brokenhearted. We just saw it with the Texas. That teacher died, and her husband died of a heart attack. He died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was so sad. Right after, that was
Yes.
that was very sad and telling for sure about what your heart
Yes.
can do and then the connections that we make in life.
Exactly. And I just, you know, I try to tell people, when someone comes to you and they're talking about a death, just listen. Just listen. They just need to be heard. Sometimes, you know, Michelle and I have talked about it. Sometimes when Michelle and I will bounce things off of each other, and when we say it out loud, we're like, oh, never mind, I got it. You know?
Right? Sometimes you just need to hear it. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you just need to hear it, and it's okay. But to talk to, and I know in my life who I can talk to about certain people. Like if I'm missing my boyfriend, there are people that didn't like my boyfriend. So
Right.
I know that I can go to certain people and they're not going to judge me, and they're not going to be like, oh, well, good riddance. You know,
Yeah.
they're going to have a heart and a compassion for me. And there's other people that don't want to hear it. So that's cool too. But
Right.
know that find that person and know that you have that person to speak to, because you have to talk about it. You have to get it out. I remember when my husband died, Michelle remembered, Deanna didn't cry.
I do remember that.
She didn't cry. And then it was literally 6 months later, she was spending the weekend at your house, and you called me and you said, I need you to get over here. We're literally sitting on the floor crying over spilled milk.
Yeah. I
And
do.
she just lost it. And we were like, Deanna. And she was like, I had to be strong for all of you. And I said, no, honey, you lost your dad. No.
Right. Yeah.
So I just think people need to talk about it and to live it and to experience it. And, you know, when my husband passed too, there was a time where I was mad, and I must have been talking out loud, because my son came by, and he was about 14 or 15 when his dad died. And he said, who are you talking to? And I said, I'm mad at your dad. And he goes, you can't be mad at my dad. He's dead. And I said, oh, yes, I can be mad at your dad. And I'm trying to process 17 years here. So, yes, I have the right to be mad at your dad. But he was like, you can't be mad at people that are gone. And I'm like, yes, I can.
Yes.
And it was about 3 weeks. I was so mad at him. How dare you leave me? I put up with you. You know, I was just talking to him out loud. And it was about 3 weeks, and then I was over it. And I still have moments. It'll be 17 years this year that he's gone, and I'm like, I'll remember something, and I'm like, you jerk. Or, you know, I'll remember something funny he did, and I'd be like, oh, dude, I wish the kids could see you do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, again, you just accept the memory when it hits you in the face. And I don't want to say marinate in it, but accept it and then just go on with it. Don't go down the rabbit hole. I know people that are severely depressed about somebody they lost. I know people, like I said, that have turned to alcohol and things like that. And you can be there for people in their mental state, but they have to find their way out of it.
Right.
And that's really hard. But to know, you know, like I told Michelle last night, I hope, Alyssa, I know you fight every day, and I'm so proud of you because you're almost hitting 2 years, right?
Yes.
I'm so proud of you, and I watch you every day, and I adore you. And but I hope you know that if you can't get a hold of your mom, I need to call my Aunt Kim. Aunt Kim, I need you. Come get me. Come over here, whatever. Just the same that if I need you and I can't find your mom, I'm going to say, hey, Alyssa, can you just, I don't want to be alone.
Right.
Can I come over? Can I be there?
Of course.
To just know in the back of your head that somebody is there for you.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. I love you.
And the other,
Go on.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No.
I was
Well,
just
I was going to say the other thing.
go
The other
ahead,
thing
Kim.
that I've learned too is I have a friend that during the pandemic, her husband decided to be dumb and make some bad choices, and now she's going through a divorce. And I've learned that divorce is a type of death too, the death of a marriage. And I've had a lot of women come to me, and I'm like, and I've said that to them, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't think about it," because they're going through the blame and the anger and the depression. It's a type of grief.
I was thinking of that today. It's funny you say that because I was literally thinking about that this morning. How anyone who's passed away in my family has pretty much been like a wave of grief coming and going, like this, like a wave. But when my husband and I separated, it was just like this weight that just stayed on me. It didn't come and go. It didn't go anywhere. And I was thinking about like the loss of a spouse and how different that is, and it's like what you said, each loss is different because you have a different relationship with each person. But for me, I just remember like sitting on the couch and just watching TV and just becoming very depressed. I couldn't eat, it was definitely, I was grieving the loss of the relationship of what I thought I had and what I thought was going to be my future. I had to grieve that. And I think that was probably my worst grief, other than like when my brother passed. But even still, when my brother passed, it was like something you could, I think, I don't know how to explain it, but I guess I could accept it in waves, you know what I mean? Sort of accept it.
Right.
But with my husband and I separating, I didn't accept it right away. I knew it was true, but I was just very depressed. It was a different kind of grief, and it was definitely
Well,
more.
because it was so, I remember you going through that, and I remember it was waves for you, and you were disappointed, and you were brokenhearted, and it's just, and it, and it was, like I said, suddenly, or it was the long time coming. However it comes, it sucks both ways. It really, really does.
Yeah, it does. It does. Because you don't know how it's going to affect you, but you have to like.
But at least that one you got to heal from.
Right.
And now you realize you're so much better off.
Right. That's true. That's true.
And
And you have to
lessons
allow
learned,
yourself to
too.
cry because
Right.
there was like growing
Makes
up.
you stronger.
Right. And growing up in my family, there was kind of like an unspoken rule about crying, like we just didn't do it. Like
Right.
and in my own self, and I don't know if it came from my family or where, but in my own mind, I had rules about crying.
You'll
And it
still
was
say
like,
stuff like that about guys and stuff.
about what?
About guys crying. You'll say certain things, and I'm
stop.
just like, you do. You have that mindset still.
I can't help it. I was raised with some macho people. I know, poor Joe. He's over there crying right now. I like that about you, Joe. I'm okay if you cry. No, but in all seriousness, I had to get to a place where I was like, I had to allow myself to cry. And I remember when Jody passed, my brother, and of course that was one of the instances where I was allowed to cry, but I had to be like, I can cry wherever I want, whenever I want, even if I'm crying at work or whatever. But the problem with giving yourself permission to cry is you just cry all the darn time. You start to cry a lot.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay because there's a release there. There's a release of that emotion there. Heather and I would run into each other in the bathroom and we play splash fight, as we're washing our hands, or we'd splash each other, or we'd run into, we'd do something in the break room or something like that. I still have those memories because I'm still in that building,
Right.
and so it's okay. And I'll start crying going, gosh, I miss you, girl. Or, it's so bizarre, but I had an employee, I work in payroll, and I had an employee call the other day and she said, I need some assistance with my paycheck. And I was like, okay, how can I help you? She goes, well, Heather's my payroll person, but I left her a message and I was just like, I go, well, Heather's not available, so I'm going to help you. And she goes, well, is she gone? Is she on vacation? And she just kept asking questions. So I finally said, ma'am, Heather passed away 2 years ago. And she goes, oh, how did I not know that? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
But that's hard on
crazy.
you, right? I mean, that brings up a lot of emotions, doesn't it?
Yes, and she just wouldn't stop. Was she on vacation? Well, when is she going to be back? And I was just like, ma'am, I'm just trying to help you, and you
Right.
won't stop asking stuff.
Right. And and what always surprised me too, Kim, when you told me, I think one time you told me with Danny, and with finally getting over Danny, or not really getting over it, but like getting better and moving forward and feeling better. It took you like 7 years is what you said, I believe, right?
Yeah, almost 8. Yeah, and honestly, it was a physical thing. I felt like this weight was taken off my shoulders, and I said, I think I'm done crying. I think I'm in a good place. I think I'm ready to date. I think. And I just said, okay, God, if you got somebody in mind for me, let's go.
Right.
But it was almost 8 years, and that's when my boyfriend and I connected a couple months later, and, but even that was a weird thing for me. So my husband passes away. I wait 8 years to date. I start dating this guy who 7 years into our relationship passes away. And you start going, is it me? Did I?
Right.
You start kind of internalizing it, going, no, it's not you. It's not, and that's a whole mindset that you have to get yourself out of, and everybody's like, it's okay, there's someone out there. No, you know what? I'm good right now. I'm good.
Right. Right.
I had 2 deaths, and I'm
Yep.
good,
Right.
Right.
Give me a minute to catch myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something else I want to remind people of too. So when people pass, I always let people know the first year sucks. The first year is awful because you're going to experience the first Christmas without them, the first Easter, their birthday, anniversaries, and it's going to suck. What I find too is that when you hit that 1 year mark, people start going, okay, you're done. Grieving's over. Let's move on.
Right.
That's not how life goes. That's not how it is. And I'm a number person, so, this year, like I said, my mom would be 72 tomorrow. This is the 28th year since she passed. This will be the 17th year since Danny passed. My daughter should be 25 next month. These are things that are constantly with you, constantly a part of you.
Yeah, and we shouldn't forget. I mean, for people to ask someone to forget about their loved one, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like put their clothes away or get rid of their pictures. I mean, you hear these things. I've heard these things
Mm-hmm.
from people, like or change their room or whatever. I never understood that, and I didn't grow up in a family where people were that pushy. My mother was like very understanding and compassionate in that way. And so I've never really been able to wrap my head around that, like somebody telling you what to do and when to do something.
Right.
When you love someone. It's like telling someone who maybe has only one picture of their child, like, get rid of it, like, forget about them.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Right, and I don't, like I said, it was 8 years that I grieved for my husband. 8 years, and I had a lot of bad experiences with him just as well as I had good, but I was in that marriage for life, and to have the rug pulled out from under me, and especially he was 45 years old. I knew my husband lived hard and played hard, so I had in my mind he was going to pass at 55 of a heart attack. So to have him die at 45, I was like, no, God, no. That wasn't my plan, you know.
Right.
So to have to wrap your head around, wait a minute, now what do I do? I'm 36 with 2 teenagers. Okay, here, I got to go figure this out and grieve and try to function. And, this week I have a coworker who I ran into who works in my building with me, and she was crying. And I said, oh, I knew her mom was sick. So I said, are you okay? Is your mom good? And she's like, yeah. She said, so-and-so passed away, which is another coworker of ours. And, I work at a school district, so there's a lot of people there, teachers, janitors, all that kind of thing. And so I said, oh, my gosh. I go, wait, she was young. She goes, yeah, she was 47, and she took her life. And I said, oh, my God. And they were really, really close. And I said, are you okay? She goes, Kim, I'm just mad that everybody keeps going on with their life, and I'm sitting here grieving. And I said, I absolutely get it.
Yeah.
I said, you don't understand, why is the sun still shining? Why are people still going about their business?
Yeah.
When your world just fell apart.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that experience that.
Oh, yeah. I felt that way for sure. Many times when people passed away in my life, like many times, and it makes you a little angry.
Envious.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I was envious when my grandmother passed away.
I'd be
of the kids, of the other kids in school that they still had their grandma.
Yeah.
But
or
not
things,
over the other
or
stuff.
like
More just like,
they're
why
lucky
are
they're not going through this right now.
Right.
Kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. Kind of like, how come they get how come they're so happy? The world's falling apart around me or for me.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
And especially bringing that up, Michelle, your grandmother, I remember Danny telling me, my grandma, everybody had to be at Sunday dinner. You could not you better be dying in the hospital. Everybody had to be there, things like that. My grandma always had as he spoke so highly. Your grandma was the glue. And then I remember having a conversation with your dad. He said, yeah, my mom. I said, Danny told me this. And he's all, yeah, my mom. Everybody had to come to dinner. He said, my mom. He said, when she died, Kim, he goes, that's when it all turns different. And I said, I get it. So pivotal people in families, that are kind of keeping it together and holding it together, change dynamics.
For sure.
That's what it feels like when Uncle Jody passed away.
Yeah.
Everything shifted.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was the same way when Grandma passed away. The first time I saw my dad cry, and he had to go hide, he left and he went outside and he hid behind the house. And I was like a daddy's girl, so I went out there. I was 8, and I was like, what's the matter, Dad? And he said, I don't want my brothers to see me cry. I don't want anybody to see me cry. Right. And that might be where I got some of my idea about crying, But, so that's kind of how it was. It was the only time I think that the first time I seen him cry. I think I saw him cry after, my mom left and stuff, and a few times when he was older. But that kind of blew me away. It was like, okay, and everyone was just, tore up because Grandma was. And you make a good point. It's like when you lose that pivotal person, and Alyssa does too, when Jody died. Even if I talk about Jody sometimes, even at work, I'll say, oh, my brother, blah, blah, blah. People will just die laughing. They're like, your brother just seems like such a great guy. And I'm like, even in death, he's just the coolest ever.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry.
No, but that's it. I remember your dad just saying, my mom was everything, Kim. And I said, oh, I get it. I said, Danny was like, no, grandma, and he would tell funny stories about her. And that's something that I like to encourage people to remember the good. Yeah. I know people struggle. Excuse me. My kids had kind of struggled with their father and his choices that he made. And I just try to encourage them, your dad had a good heart and he did do some good things. And without him, I wouldn't have my beautiful children. So I cling on to that. But, something happened to me like a month ago. I grew up, I didn't know my father, but I knew his parents. I spent time with my grandparents camping, and they taught me how to fish and pan for gold. So I remember being at my grandparents' house, and my grandma would be like in her muumuu or her nightgown thing, but she'd have to do something outside, so she'd go put her sneakers on, and she'd be outside tending to the dog or watering the lawn or whatever. And a couple months ago, I had to go outside to do something with the dog, and I threw my tennies on, and I'm standing outside, and I looked down, and I went, oh, my God, I'm my grandmother now. Fabulous. Standing here in my nightgown and sneakers. Okay, it's all come full circle now.
Right.
Right. But it was a good memory, and I love it, and I miss her. And she gave me great memories and taught me a lot of great things, and I'm grateful for that. But so you just have to cherish those funny times and those moments and lean on them. And something when I told my daughter that I was writing a book, she said, Mom, please put in a chapter about what to say to people. She said, people say the dumbest things to me when I talk about my dad, or I talk about, my Uncle Jody, or I talk about my sister. People say the dumbest things to me, and I'm like, I know, honey, I get it. I have a coworker who was married for 37 years and 5 adult kids, and our husband passed away suddenly. And she came to me, and we were talking about it, and she said, one of my coworkers said, well, I know how you feel. I had a dog die once.
Oh my
Lord.
gosh.
And I said, I know you wanted to throat punch her. She said, pretty much. And I just said, Carmen, that's the person you can't rely on. That's the person you can't talk to. And we just have to show grace and mercy and move on.
Well, we do have to be fair that there are many people close to their pets and love their pets, and
right.
Yeah, and that is a family
but
member oftentimes to
you're
them.
You're kind of comparing apples to oranges on that one.
Right, but I'm just saying to be fair, like just and just to be fair in general, though, to be honest, like I've said some stupid stuff to people when I didn't understand. I didn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? And at the time, I didn't realize it. I think it. I don't remember who it was, but I said something like. God always has a plan or something. And they were like, what could possibly be his plan in this, And then what do you say?
Right.
Then what do you say?
Right.
Really, those are stupid things to say. Sometimes just,
Not
just like you said, just listening
not really.
and just being there. for them.
Because
Well, if they bring it up and they say God has a plan, I mean, you can believe that, of course.
right.
But if they don't want to hear it and they're not ready to hear it,
Right.
that's the
They're
worst
not
thing.
gonna hear.
Right.
That
That's
might be the
true.
worst
You're
thing
right.
you can say.
You're
and
right.
people have asked me, like when my daughter died, how are you not mad at him? How are you not mad at God? And I said, I'm just not. I have a peace. She wasn't supposed to be here. She's with my mom. Where else would I want her to be?
Right.
If she's not with me, she's with my mom. That's cool.
You're way more logical than most, Kim, and not only just logical, you're a very strong woman.
Thank you.
What a
I-
strange
you know,
thing for people to ask or to say, though, to you. Why are you not mad at God? Why do they want you to
Because
be?
a lot of people are.
Yeah,
No,
but why do they want?
Not necessarily that they want her to be, just that that's probably would be their reaction, or they would assume
Right,
that would be
but
your
what
reaction.
you would think they would just be happy for you and that you're not, and that you have that peace.
Well, maybe they feel like if they tell her that, then she could come out and say her true feelings. Maybe they felt like she was holding back.
Maybe.
Well, and people got upset with me when my daughter died because I said, if I had to lose a child, I feel this was the best case scenario because my other children were 4 and 6, and I knew them.
Right.
And I didn't know her other than in the womb. And people were like, how can you say that? And I was like, because this is how I made peace with it. Okay, God.
It's your
she's not
way of
meant to be
coping.
here. And and if I had to lose a child, I didn't know her.
Yeah.
So I don't have the trauma that I would have had if I would have lost one of the other two. So,
Right.
and it's really hard too for people the tragedies of the young, like this mass school shooting and stuff like that. But even Johnny, our nephew dying, both of my children said, Mom, I'm having a hard time with this because it was their cousin. It was their generation,
Yeah.
and people still, the older people die first. But I remember laying in intensive care, 28 years old, and my dad coming in saying, and I mentioned this on the other podcast, him saying, let's get this straight. I die first.
Right.
You bury me. And I was like, okay, Dad, because I could tell in his face, he was like, I'm not burying my kid.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the
So
worst.
we have a hard time because, there's a chain of command.
Yeah, there's
more or less.
there's a order of semblance of order of some
Yes.
sort. Yeah, that we think.
So when people
it should
die,
be.
I lost my father. My father was 40 years old. He just turned 40. My mom was 44. My
That's
husband
right.
was 45. So these are not old ages. These are young ages.
Right.
My best friend that died, my coworker, was 35.
Yeah.
So it's hard for us to understand their absence and their loss. It's not like we can pick up the phone and call them.
Right.
They're just gone, and we have to go on.
Right.
Cherishing them and loving their memory, and that's really not always easy to do.
Right, and find some meaning. And I think the meaning that you found is by sharing with others and writing a book and being able to help others. I was so impressed when Heather passed, how you came alongside her husband and you were able to help him in just things that we just don't take for granted. I'm sorry, things that we just have no idea. As someone who has not lost a spouse, we have no idea. I had no idea I wouldn't have known how to help him as far as, just insurance and all these, all that kind of stuff that you had to.
Yeah, I just went into mode, I was like, my brain is going, what are we doing? I just went into action. And it's interesting because I remember my son saying to me, Mom, his wife, her family, the Clarks, hadn't really had major losses like we had. And Ryan said, my wife hasn't had a major loss yet at the time. And he said, because she doesn't really get why I'm feeling how I'm feeling, and why I'm dealing with what I'm dealing with my dad. Well, then when her grandfather died, Linda's husband, it hit her, and she said to Ryan, oh, I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
there are people out there that just haven't suffered a loss that's close to them,
Well, and I would say this, my advice would be this: if you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Just say how are you doing, and listen and let a person talk. And if they don't want to talk,
and that's my advice.
just
that's
walk
exactly
away,
what I say.
or because I did that, we've all, I don't know if we've all done it, but I know that I've done it to where I've hurt people. And even one of my cousins, his father passed away from suicide, and a priest, not a priest, but a preacher told him he was going to hell. And I'm just like, he was 10, my cousin was 10, and this is what he was told.
Yeah.
And it's just so amazing and ridiculous to me. It's just, how can you be that ignorant? Just tell a 10-year-old that. How can you act that way? I know that's what he believes, but that doesn't make it right to say that to a 10-year-old. About their father while they're grieving.
That's a perfect segue into the other thing that I'm going to say is spirituality. There's not one religion, there's not one person on this earth that will not experience grief and death. And every religion deals with it differently. And you can't force what you believe. Because some people say, funerals are opportunities to get people to come to Christ and get people to, and I'm like, whoa. Funerals are opportunities to say goodbye and close. That's what funerals are opportunities for. That's why we come together.
Mm-hmm. Or celebrate the life of the person who passed.
Yes.
Not remember.
So, and I've experienced a lot of things. Michelle, you've experienced a lot of things. We see, we smell, my son and his wife just had an experience the other day where I'm pretty sure Johnny was around them.
Right. I was telling Alyssa about that.
Yeah. And so we have experiences where I believe they are an energy, and I believe they are around us because I can't deny what I see and know.
Right.
And I've lost a lot of people, but I cannot deny what I see. One day I was thinking about my boyfriend, and I said, dude, if you're around me, let me know. I get in the car, and I'm not even kidding. Our song comes on the radio, and I just kind of started laughing.
Wow.
And then I looked up at the time, and it was 11:08. Well, that's his birthday. And I was like, okay, you're good. I just needed to know you were good.
Awesome. Yep.
So I get everybody believes differently, but you can't push your beliefs on people. Right. Mercy and grace and kindness, and just listen.
Right.
Just listen. It doesn't matter what you think they're happening to their soul, because honestly, we really don't know.
Right.
So don't tell somebody, especially a child,
Yeah.
And I encouraged my children to speak to anybody, because they were 12 and 14 when their dad died. They were 4 and 6 when their sister died, and I almost died, and my son very much remembers that night and exactly what happened. So I just encourage them to speak and talk to the crossing guard. You don't have to talk to me, but your family is there for you, and they're the ones that love you the most. But if you can't do that, find somebody, even if you have to go to a counselor or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, people we need each other and connection, and it's very important. And especially, you were talking about there was a suicide recently at your work. I mean, it's a really hard thing, and we can't blame ourselves as a person who's left behind. We shouldn't blame ourselves, and we shouldn't think that we could have done anything to prevent it, because we oftentimes can't. But we definitely should try to be there for people and take notice if we can. And anyone who's out there listening, find someone, talk to anyone. It's a very lonely place to be.
Find me. I'll listen all day long.
Yeah, it's a very
I'm
lonely place
listener.
to be.
I work in the payroll department. I have a lot of patience.
Right, you have to. And there's 800 numbers too, the hotlines, that you can call.
Good, yes, because my sister and I were going to work the other day, and there was a traffic backup. Well, somebody had gone on the 215 bridge and jumped, and my heart was just so broken, and was broken for him, that he was so in turmoil that he had to do that. But his family gets a phone call, because, like I said, I had the police officer standing at my front door telling me he wasn't coming home again. It's not a good feeling. It's heartbreaking, and it's hard, and like I said, it never leaves you, and everybody's on a different journey of grief, because Alyssa's in a different place about her grandmother than you are, Michelle, because that was your mother.
Right.
Right, and also me coming off of drugs and me being on drugs has a lot to do with the grief that I did or didn't feel. Because during all those years that I used, I did lose a lot of people, especially friends on the street that would overdose, and I wouldn't I wouldn't honestly really feel anything. I mean, I would feel sad kind of at the time, but I wouldn't grieve over it because I didn't have to think about it, because I would just use again and again and again and not think about it. And now to the point, it's been almost 2 years, but I stopped getting my last Sublocade injection. So I'm starting to, like a few months back. So I'm starting to actually finally start having real feelings again. And the other night, Johnny's death really started hitting me. So I stayed up until like 2 a.m. crying. I was just looking at pictures of Johnny and crying.
Oh, honey.
So but different things. I know it was like 3 nights ago, but just different things are like popping up into my head, different memories of different things. And I'm just like, it's starting to finally come to me and I have to start finally grieving all of these things and figuring out how to deal with them now that I'm sober.
And that's what our last guest last week, Lizzie, said. Remember, she said for 2 weeks she just laid in the bed and cried at the rehab because she started to have to feel her feelings. And
no,
her
that
emotions.
happens when you get clean. But since I've been on, the Sublocade and Subutex for all these years, it's still been blocking that in my mind. And now that I've been off of it for a while and it's finally starting to leave my system, I'm starting to get those feelings back, which is going to mean I'm going to need to start dealing with these things. So.
Right, yeah.
But let me ask you this. After Johnny, after that cry, after you went through that, did you feel a release? Did you feel a peace?
Yeah, I mean, I think also there's, when, we've all done it. When somebody passes away, we want to know what happened that day. We go over it. And I remember doing the same thing when Uncle Danny died, when we were like, what exactly happened? How did he get from there to there? How did did somebody drag him? We go through these things in our head over and over. So I think it's just more of that question, like just wanting to know what happened. And it was, that part just really bothers me. So it was still, I did feel a little better after crying, but I still have that big question mark.
It's
it drives it's frustrating.
Yeah,
you
not
feel
being
frustrated.
able to put all the pieces together and then being stopped by the police and the sheriffs of getting all the information.
Right.
And so, I was feeling a lot of that frustration this week as well. And then it's.
But I feel, and I honestly believe that it's going to come full circle. It's going to come out information, and I think it comes to us when we're ready for it.
Yeah.
Because look at Danny; it'll be 17 years this year. And it was only a couple years ago where I actually talked to a psychic, and Michelle and I had pretty much pieced together my husband's accident, but he just ran it all down, word for word, this man who didn't know anything about this accident. And then he said to me, I'm not telling you anything you didn't already know, right, Kim? And I said, yeah, that's exactly what me and my cousin figured out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and my bottom line is the parts that I don't know, I'm not supposed to know. And he's at peace. He's in the realm of love, and why wouldn't I want him there?
The most impressive thing to me when Danny had passed, we were in the, is it called the morgue? I guess it's called the morgue. We were viewing his body. And
at the funeral home.
Funeral home, thank you. I'm bad at this. At the funeral home, we were viewing his body, and I remember we all went up and we had a look at him, and then we sat down, and then we only sat there for a few minutes, and Kim, you were like, okay, let's go. And I'm like, what? And you said, he's not here. And I was so impressed with that because that's really how do I say it? Logical of you. You knew that it's just his body. He's not here, and I was impressed with that. I mean, I know that it's a hard time for you, but it was very insightful and I appreciated that.
And then I get home and going, why didn't, because, remember he was all wrapped up. Why didn't I make sure it was him? Why didn't I, and things like my daughter said, she goes, he just had a burn mark on his ear, Mom. That's the only place I saw the burns.
I saw it.
So I'm at home going, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? But I had to make peace with, I handled it the way I handled it, and that's what I needed to do. And my children were standing there. So, I'm 36, trying to wrap my head around, and they're 12 and 14 going, what? It was just so shocking and so, hard to get through because you get thrown into it.
Right.
Nobody signs up for this.
Well, you second guess yourself. There's a second guessing that goes on. There's what if that goes on. There's all these things that go on, and that's unfortunate. And I think you said it best when you said, I did exactly what I was supposed to do in that moment. And I think that for me being like what's the word I'm even looking for? I'm kind of like a worrywart, and I'm kind of like
a pessimist. I'm just kidding.
Well, anyways, I don't think I'm a pessimist, but I think I worry about things and I do the what if thing, and I should have done this or I should have done that. I second guess myself a lot.
Yeah.
And what helped me finally like stop doing that was like my mother-in-law, my ex-mother-in-law. She said to me one day, you know, if you were supposed to do it, then you would have done it, and God's not going to allow you. You know, if it's supposed to have been done, it should have been done. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. And that really gave me peace, and I started living my life that way. You know, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do when I'm supposed to do it, and I just follow my gut, my instinct, and my heart, and do what I'm supposed to do. And I also listen to advice from other people, because Alyssa has told me different things, and I'll be thinking, like, I'm going to give this person, like, you know, one of the homeless bags, and then I'll remember Alyssa saying, like, not if they're talking to themselves. And I'll see them
themselves a certain way.
Yeah, and I'll see them. I'll be like, yeah, that person's like yelling over there. What am I thinking? You know, so you have to listen to advice of others, and you have to also follow your gut and your instincts.
And what have I always told you, Michelle? You're always where you're supposed to be.
Right.
People are like, how did I get here? Well, you're always where you're supposed to be. Now you need to navigate your way out of that. You know, one of the things I wanted to bring up too is my mom died. When my mom died, I told you, a 23-year battle of cancer. She said, I would like to die at home, but if I am dying in the hospital, drag me out onto the lawn, because I will not die in that building. So I told my husband, that's your job. But you got to drag Mom out. And he's like, okay. But she was dying at home. Well, when she was passing away, there was a lot of people at the house, our pastor, you know, family and stuff. And my husband pulled me out of her room and said, somebody brought you a burger. I need you to eat, because I hadn't eaten in like 3 days because I was stressing over my mom. And then once I sat down to eat, there was commotion in my mom's room. Well, by the time I got to her room, she had already passed. She just passed. And I told my sister, I am really grateful I missed Mom's last breath. And she said, because my sister was a foot from my mom's face when she died, and she said, I wish I would have missed it. She goes, because it haunts me. And my mom will be gone 28 years this September. And she goes, it bothers me. I should have not been there. And it's just, we had the same, you know, we were going through the same experience, but having totally different what ifs and totally different, you know, I should have done this or I should have done that.
Yeah.
And that's hard, because I have to honor and respect how she's feeling, and you know, and she honors and respects how I'm feeling.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and when you told me, Michelle, with you and your sisters, when your mom passed away, that's an experience that you guys had to share and work through. And now it's a memory, it's a core memory that you have to process, you know.
Well,
because like when my mom died, I asked the doctor, did she die of cancer? Did she? Or did she die of malnutrition? Because I was on that feeding tube. He's like, Kim, she died of cancer. Because I had that survivor's guilt. Did I do enough for her? He's like, Kim, you guys took great care of her.
Right.
And he kind of had to tell me to stop obsessing.
Well, you did the same thing with Katie. You thought it was something you did. And I think that's not uncommon. That's typical of us as humans. We want to blame ourselves.
Well, they did that with Aunt Arlene, too. They tried to get her all those different treatments and stuff, and then they were kind of blaming themselves at the end because they did all the treatments. If they were like, well, we didn't do this one. We didn't try this one. We should have done this.
Right.
You know, but they tried so many different things.
I've heard it said, and I think I've said it on this show before, I've heard it said that we want to place blame on ourselves or someone else because we can't accept that there's no control. We have no control. Like that really what it boils down to is, really what it boils down to is we don't have any control. So we have to let go of the blame and realize that it's out of our control. Certain things, if your children are going to use drugs, that's out of your control. All you can do is educate them. All you can do is the best that you can do in the time, you know, that you were there and that you were doing it. And I think sometimes we have to realize that with our parents and give our parents forgiveness, because they're doing the best they can do at that moment, given the tools that they have that their parents gave them.
That's what that saying is in like AA and NA, let go and let God. And it's true, because you can't sit there and worry about something you literally have no control over. And that's everything.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was going to say, I remember having a conversation, Michelle, with your sister, Tammy. And she was like, no, my mom needs to do this and my mom needs to do that. And I said, Tammy, your mom doesn't want to do that. Well, no, that's what she needs to do. And I said, wait. I said, if you were in her situation and your boys are telling you to do it, she goes, oh, no, my boys are. She goes, okay, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I said, you have to accept that they don't. My mom was tired, 23 years of cancer treatments, and she was tired.
Right.
And she was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't fight. So, I don't say she lost her. She won. It can't hurt her anymore. She's in love and peace with my daughter, with my husband. She's having a good time. And so, but you can't control what people choose to do either.
Right.
I know of somebody that said, if I ever got sick, I'm going to commit suicide. And I was like, whoa. They're like, oh, no, I will not suffer. And I was like, oh okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, our
What do you
mom
say
didn't
to
want,
that?
she didn't want to do chemo. And then,
Right.
that was when the cancer was at stage 0. And she, they did the lobectomy and they removed part of her lung. And then, when it came back a lot more aggressive. And after the lobectomy, she could have done the chemo to get rid of any existing cells, but she chose not to. And it came back more aggressive and more strong. And then she made a decision she wanted to do the chemo. But you hear so many negative things about chemo that you don't necessarily want to go there. You don't want to live your final days sick sometimes. So we have to respect her choice. We have to respect mom's choice, and you have to respect, your loved one's choice. We have 2 minutes. I want to say thank you, Kim, for coming on, and we are going to have you on again soon, hopefully, with your book.
Oh, yes, that would be wonderful.
Thank
you.
awesome.
Thank you guys for
Aunt
letting me
Kim.
tell my truth. Yes.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate you. We love you. Have a good
Love
night.
you too. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. I just want to say also, I heard this week about a group called NAMI. It's NAMI, and it's a group for people with mental illness who are struggling, and they have mentors for people who have mental illness. If you want to look them up, they're at www.nami.org. That's NAMI. They're going to be having a walk coming up soon, too. They have walks for awareness of mental health issues. Thank you so much for listening to KCAA Radio. 102.3 FM